Critical Role is now in its 7th year with almost 300 episodes, an animated series, books, comics, games, merchandise. But we're going to go all the way back to the beginning.
Welcome to the first episode of Critical Role. Now what this basically is a continuation of our weekly D&D game. Me and a bunch of other likely nerdy and enjoyable voice actors gathering around, rolling some dice, killing some creatures, having some adventure. And now we have the pleasure of bringing it on the stream for you to watch, enjoy, and occasionally interact with.
That's right, I'm going to be breaking down Campaign 1. This has been much requested in the comments of my Campaign 3 breakdowns, and I'm so excited to go on this journey of going back and sort of discovering where Critical Role began. This video is sponsored by Broken Anvil Miniatures and their project Forged, but more on that later. Whether you're new to Campaign 1 or you're an OG Campaign 1 critter, we're going to be doing deep dives every single week into every single episode. Plus, we're going to be doing watch parties in my Discord, so if you want to watch along with me, make sure you sign up. The link is in the description. Campaign 1, or Vox Machina, was a continuation of their home game. They were actually playing that game in Pathfinder, but when they started streaming it, they moved it to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, this has been said for a couple of reasons. Number one is because it was perceived that Dungeons & Dragons combat would be slightly faster and a little bit more streamlined, which would make for a better experience for the audience of the streamed game. Also, they thought that the brand name of Dungeons & Dragons might attract more viewers because at the time they were not even sure if anyone would be interested in watching the show. Ha! It's a really interesting thought experiment to me to wonder what the landscape of actual plays and the TTRPG industry would look like today if Critical Role had decided to stick with Pathfinder. But you know what? That's probably a topic for like a whole other video. The first episode of Campaign 1 kicks off with a little primer on each of the characters and their backstories. There was some accompanying art to go with this little reel, but unfortunately there were some licensing and copyright issues, so that has been blurred now, but the audio is still really helpful for giving us an overview of who these characters are. First up is Grog Strongjaw, the Goliath barbarian, played by Travis Willingham. Grog was part of a wandering family or group of Goliaths. Grog was exiled from this group for refusing to kill an elderly gnome. He was beaten and left to die, but he was nursed back to health by a relative of this elderly gnome called Pike, and they are now best friends. Pike is a gnome cleric played by Ashley Johnson. She is a follower of Saren Ray, but unfortunately due to Ashley's filming schedule and work in New York, she's often not in Campaign 1. She kind of Skypes in occasionally, and she is sometimes there in person, so Pike is a character that sort of comes and goes. Next is Keyleth, the half-elven druid of the Air Ashari, played by Marisha Ray. Keyleth is on her Aramente, which is a sort of druidic path or journey that she must undergo to prove herself to be a leader of the Ashari. Next is... I'm gonna try and get this right. Percival Frederickstein von Mulsel Klowelski de Rollo III. Probably butchered that. Played by Taliesin Jaffe, a human gunslinger who was one of several children in a noble family in Whitestone. His home was taken over by the mysterious couple, the Briarwoods, who killed almost his entire family. Both he and his sister escaped, but while they were running, his sister was shot by arrows and she fell, leaving Percy alone. One night he had a dream of a roaring cloud of smoke that would offer him vengeance, and it was then that he invented his first gun.
Hey, it's Posh Gun Guy.
Next is Scanlan Shortholt, the gnome bard, played by Sam Riegel. He is self-appointed as charming and charismatic, and he joined Dr. Dranzel's spectacular traveling troupe, where he honed his skills as a bard. Scanlan yearns for true love, especially after the death of his mother at the hands of goblins. Tiberius Stormwind is a dragon blood sorcerer played by Orion Akaba. He was born to a noble family in the land of Draconia, and he is obsessed with arcane research and study. He learned of ancient artifacts that he was seeking, and he was sent on a diplomatic mission to sort of travel through Tal'Dorei, but what he was really interested in was hunting down these artifacts. Next is Vax'ildan, or Vax, the half-elf rogue played by Liam O'Brien. Along with his sister Vex, his father was a noble elf and his mother was a human peasant. They were raised by their mother for most of their life, but then they were sent to the elven city of Singorn, where they were raised by their father, who didn't really care for them. They escaped escaped to return home, but upon their return, they found that a dragon had decimated their village and their mother was dead. He and his sister have since traveled the lands, seeking fortune wherever they may, whilst he honed his skills with the blade. Vex's sister Vexalia, or Vex, is played by Laura Bailey, and she is a half-elven ranger. Whilst her brother felt more at home in the dark alleys and streets of a city, she felt much more at home in the woods, where she managed to meet and tame a companion, a bear called Trinket. So yes, if you're new to Campaign 1, there was another player in Critical Role in the beginning, Orion Okaba, who played Tiberius Stormwind. There has been plenty of discussion and speculation about why Orion left, and honestly I don't feel like I have much more to add to that conversation, but I will give the cliff notes. Basically, Orion was having lots of disagreements with the cast, both on screen and off screen. In some episodes it does get quite tense towards the end. He stays until episode 27. That episode is probably the most difficult to get through in terms of those disagreements and that awkwardness. So Tiberius is only a character in that first section of the show. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into the meat of the episode. It is so strange to me to watch the beginning of this episode and not hear Matt do his usual spiel. He didn't quite have it down pat at that point, they were still sort of working things out. It's explained that prior to the stream, the group had been instrumental in stopping a demonic incursion of the throne of Aman. Because of this, they had been rewarded with a brand new keep. However, just as it was completed, Allura Visoran, a member of the Tal'Dorei Council and a powerful mage, asked the party to help her find her friend Lady Kima, who had gone missing under the halls of Kraghammer. Kima, a paladin of the Platinum Dragon, had had some dark visions about some evil kind of growing in power under Kraghammer, so had gone to investigate. And so, with the promise of a sizable reward, we find Vox Machina in the city of Kraghammer, located in the Cliff Keep Mountains of Tal'Dorei. And of course, the first thing they need to do is find a tavern. They head to the Iron Hearth Tavern, where they make a great first impression.
Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, we are traveling from far away. We've just arrived from Iman. We are fascinated to see your underground city, and to celebrate the occasion, I would like to buy every dwarf in here around. Bartender!
The music stops. The conversation stops. All dwarven eyes turn to the table, and they all turn to a single dwarven woman at the back who's behind one of the bars, who has a towel over one arm, and she's kind of frantically looking around. She's staring confused at you, and all eyes are on her, and she goes, "Well, it's about time someone around here had some generosity. Certainly pay up front drinks around on this half-elven gentleman." And we are treated very early on to Vex's desire to haggle over every single coin as she pays for the room, and she is very unimpressed by the price.
About 25 gold pieces, does that sound about right?
Total.
25 total.
Oh, okay.
Kima went missing in a mine owned by the Greyspine, so the party ask around a little bit to learn what they can. They hear that there has been trouble at the mines. What a classic D&D hook. With reports of goblin and other dark creature incursions, fighting the miners and killing them and forcing them to block off part of the mine so that those incursions would stop happening. We also learned that the Greyspines are not great employers. They tend to treat their workers quite poorly, and nobody seems to have a particularly good opinion of them. In typical Grog fashion, the first thing he wants to do is do a fighting match, but unfortunately, the reigning champion, Bulgus, is a little bit too drunk to fight. However, with some helpful flirting from Vex...
What do you do, Bulgus?
What do I do?
It's ridiculous.
I own the brewery in town.
You do?
The only one.
The best brewery.
The only. Of course it's the best. I'll put everyone out of business.
And some not so helpful flirting from Keyleth.
I reach out and I stroke his bicep.
God,
Because I can't hear that.
I use it again. I'm like, what are
Make a
you doing?
persuasion check.
Keyleth, stop doing that.
I disagree.
Roll well.
Persuasion
Roll
check.
so good.
I'm really
Like,
low in
yeah, I know these.
charisma. Really awkward. Persuasion.
Roll your persuasion.
Oh.
Oh no, what was it?
I rolled a 2
It's all my
Plus?
friends here.
plus my persuasion of 0. Why
am I not talking to you?
They learn from Bulgus that if they want to get in the good graces of Nostoc Greyspine, they should bring him a gift. And what better gift but a barrel of his own wine that he brews. He trades them a barrel of Thistlebranch Dark Blood wine in exchange for 1 cup of Dragon's Blood. And this is when we learn of Vox Machina's disgusting habit of putting creature parts inside their bag of holding.
Is that still in there? I
No,
don't know.
we actually got rid of the troll deck.
Oh, okay.
Should we trade the troll dick for something?
I thought we used it as a
I
weapon.
offered it up, and by that time it had like turned into like a slimy.
Ew, Val.
I thought we threw it at somebody.
Deciding to wait until the next day before they go and try and find No Stock Grayspine, the party split up a little. Grog and Scanlan go to find some pleasurable company. The twins, Vex and Vax, go to scope out Grayspine Manor. Keyleth and Percy are making nice comment cards for the bartender here. And Tiberius goes to House Thunderbrand. He wants to go there because he's interested in arcane things, and he heard that this is the only family really in Kraghammer that deals in the arcane. However, once he arrives, he finds that there is a protective enchantment around the house, and despite slinging several spells at it, he is not able to get to the door. The party reconnect back at the inn just in time to see Trinket being pushed into the fighting ring to have a fight with the reigning champion Balgus. Trinket, no! Just the first in many times when Trinket is somewhere that he really shouldn't be. Vex leaps in and tries to convince everyone that she will fight the bear instead.
Pushing my way through the crowd.
What'd you roll?
A 1.
Yes!
First one of the series, everybody!
Hey, it's the first nat 1 of the campaign. Keyleth casts a cloud of fog over the ring so that she can duck in really quickly, and under the cover of this fog, she uses her wild shape to turn into a bear exactly like Trinket. And at the same time, she polymorphs Trinket into a little mouse who can kind of scamper away out of harm's way. Shenanigans, really. That's all I can call it. Shenanigans ensue, and Keyleth is pretending to be a performing bear, kind of trying to distract everybody.
I'm good at.
You're performing as a bear!
Hey, the first natural 20 of the game. After that all sort of settles down, they all head back to their rooms for a long rest. Today's video is sponsored by Broken Anvil Miniatures, otherwise known as BAM, which is just really fun to say. Fans of Broken Anvil know them for their beautifully sculpted minis, and they have a brand new web store. It features some of their most beloved models as well as new ones, including this Turkey Paladin, which, I'm sorry, we've got to check it out. Turkey. Look at this thing! Oh, that's so good. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it so much. I'm also obsessed with this half-orc wizard. I just think that she's so cool. And look at this plasmoid fighter. The plasmoids are so cool. The BAM team also has a new campaign which is live right now called Forged. It is a huge collection of fantastically sculpted 28 millimeter heroic scale minis. Plus they go together with 5e compatible content. As this campaign grows, so does your haul, just like a miniature collecting dragon. Dozens of free and purchasable extras are waiting to be unlocked and added to your collection. So if you want to get your hands on a massive assortment of minis without breaking the bank, check out both BAM's website and the Forged campaign. There are links in the description. BAM, BAM, BAM! The next day, they all head to Grayspine Manor with their offering of wine, but they are directed to the quarry, which is where No Stock Grayspine is working. But before they leave, Scanlan turns invisible and ducks into the door so that he can sneak around. He mainly has a little look around into a few different rooms, but
there was some locked doors. Man, I wish you could have been there. It was exciting, but ultimately pointless. So let's go down to the mine.
Using Dimension Door, he bamfs out of the house back to the party, and they all head off to the quarry. They meet Grayspine, who asks what they want. Grayspine is not happy about Lady Chemo being in town. She was apparently causing some trouble, she was resisting arrest, and then she sort of ran off into the mines, and she hasn't been seen since. The party offered to go in and get her, which is what they were going to do anyway, and he agrees to give them free reign of the mine. Thank you so much to my patrons and YouTube members, and a special thank you to Yasha, Admiral, Tony, Mark, Rob, Gemini, and Chad. They head down to the tunnels just as...
And you start seeing small green scampering things rushing through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 goblins come rushing out of the tunnel.
I don't
We
like
should
these guys.
attack them. I string my bow.
That's right, don't you
Yeah.
have like family
All right,
histories?
the 3 dwarves that were running out, one of them gets hacked down by one of the goblins that jump onto him and start tearing
Take a
his
shot
neck.
right
I
now.
take a shot. I shoot it.
Okay, both of you guys roll.
Yep.
Throw
to
a
attack on
dagger.
this.
We get our first Critical Role combat. Nowadays, we have these beautiful, complex, detailed maps, and just are the envy pretty much of every dungeon master. And it's so lovely to see these humble beginnings of these hand-drawn maps on pieces of paper that Matt was using when the stream first started. I think seeing this in particular was really part of what drew people to Critical Role, because it really did embody what a home game was to a lot of people, without sort of a lot of fancy accessories or fancy lighting or anything like that. It was just like people sitting around drawing some stuff on paper, and people could really connect with that. The party are attacking these goblins and ogres when they realize that the goblins are actually running from something. Dun dun dun! However, despite this knowledge, the party still continue to attack them. And I think that this is a really interesting shift in tone that we see between Campaign 1 and Campaign 2. They're really treating these creatures as if they are not sentient, they are not humanoid, and that they just deserve to die. Particularly Scanlan, who we know his mother was killed by goblins, so for him, he really has this sort of personal thing against goblins. But in Campaign 2, I think we saw them move away from that mindset of that more like, I guess, video game mindset of everything kind of being something that you just have to kill to get through. And in Campaign 2, we saw a little bit more of a nuanced idea of what it means to be good and bad, and you know, the choices that they made, the different characters or the different creatures that they would kill. You know, there's even this example here where Tiberius casts a fireball and kills 2 of the dwarves. And that's just kind of like a little bit of a throwaway line of like, oh, and you killed 2 dwarves as well. I think that would be treated really differently in Campaign 2 and Campaign 3, just because of the way that the game has evolved in that time. I'm not saying that that first way of playing is wrong by any stretch, but it's just interesting to see that shift. Also, the descriptions of killing things just seem way gorier to me, especially Grog. Just... In this combat, we also see a lot of like rules fumbling, getting some of the rules wrong. And honestly, I'm kind of glad that I wasn't around at that time, at least, you know, watching along with it to sort of see what I'm sure was massive amounts of criticism and actuallys and corrections that the cast would have gotten in these early days, or probably even, I mean, they still get it now, but when they were still sort of getting used to converting from Pathfinder to D&D. So back to the combat, Keyleth blocks off the tunnel with a wall of stone, and they manage to grab one of the goblins and ask them what's going on. They basically say there's something down there, something is making things, very creepy, and then smashing through that stone wall.
You see immediately cruising through.
What the fuck is that?
What is it?
A bulbous, oversized Naga-like creature. You've encountered a Naga before, which is
A Naga?
a large serpentine creature with a humanoid head. However, this one is swollen. It is bulbous. The way it moves looks unnatural, and it has affixed to it not 1, not 3, but 5 other different colored Naga heads that look to be stitched to its body. It is a seriously terrible abomination.
The party fight these Naga, which are these sort of snake-like creatures. There's a few variations of them in the monster manual that are good or evil aligned, but this particular one has multiple heads, and these heads have sort of been sewn on in this experimental patchwork, really gross abomination. The party fight this creature and...
24.
24 points of lightning damage.
Kill it, kill it.
How do you want to do this?
Wait, is it the first time?
I've never killed
anything in 2 years.
For the people at home, we live to hear Matt say, how do you want to do this?
I let the player describe their victory.
This is so great to me. This is such an integral part of Critical Role. How do you want to do this? And just hearing them explain what that means, like what it means for them in their home game, explaining to the audience what that means, and now how that is just so ubiquitous with Critical Role, that phrase. The Naga defeated and the mystery of the mines ahead of them, the episode ends. So my general thoughts about this is that it's just very fascinating to me to look at Campaign 2 and Campaign 3. So I started watching Critical Role in Campaign 2 to come back to Campaign 1 and really just see, I guess, the difference in tone and the vibe. Also, I find it especially challenging because the production quality is also much lower, of course, in these early episodes because they were sort of working it out and starting out. So the audio quality in particular is something that I find very challenging given I sometimes struggle with auditory things. And they also still haven't quite worked out how to stream a game in an audience-friendly way necessarily. Like there's a lot of crosstalk. There's a lot of rustling sounds at the table. There's a lot of eating. And because they don't have that audio optimized, it sort of all does end up in a little bit of a jumble. And I think as time goes on, they get better at honing those skills of making sure that they're giving space to the people who are currently in the scene and not talking over them or things like that. Yeah, just what it means to actually be streaming a game and how that is different to a home game. There are also some jokes in this episode that I don't think they would make in current episodes. Like there's a couple of kind of off-color jokes that sort of made me like cringe a little bit. Yeah, I think they wouldn't necessarily make those same jokes now. But, you know, I think that's probably the case for pretty much all media. I'm sure I'm going to look back on some of the jokes that I'm making now in 7 to 10 years' time and be like, oh, no. It's time to hear your thoughts, though. Whereabouts are you on your Campaign 1 journey? And what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to make some connections and references now to future Critical Role content, so if you don't want spoilers for future content, then I guess I'll say goodbye to you now. But for the rest of you, it's really fun to see these sort of glimmers of future references in this very first episode. For example, the troll dick that is stowed in the bag of holding, that became a little Easter egg in Legend of Vox Machina when they are escaping the dragon's lair, and Scanlan grabs kind of like the only thing he's got, which is this disgusting thing. Plus the keep in Amman, which was built for them specifically in the pre-campaign game. In Legend of Vox Machina, it's actually more of like an old rundown keep that's given to them, which I think kind of fits more with their like misfit vibe. I think that was a really clever writing choice to change it from that. Also, I love how Allura and Chemo are referred to as friends in this episode when we know that later on down the campaign, they end up getting married. I'm really happy that they didn't end up just like staying as roommates. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help. I know that every channel says it, but it really does make a big difference in helping my videos get in front of new people who might enjoy them. And we're almost at 15,000 subscribers, which I think would be a wonderful goal to meet by the end of the year. And if this is the first video of mine that you've watched and you're currently watching Campaign 3, you should check out my Campaign 3 deep dives. I've got them for every single episode of Campaign 3 so far, and we have a watch party every week in my Discord. Thank you so much to Broken Anvil Miniatures for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to get your hands on some beautiful minis. My Campaign 1 Episode 2 breakdown will come out in 2 weeks' time, so I'll see you then. Bye!